हम्म, इस पे आ जाएगा। But Muhammad wa ale Muhammad salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد
Maulana Sahib is on his way, so he'll be here in the next, hopefully, 8-10 minutes. So I'll ask the brother just to recite Salam in the meantime. For Muhammad Ali Muhammad Sallallahu
बची हम शक्ल मुस्तफा ने है चांद पानी पिलाने लाए एक महलबा को सरबर की अज़ब तीरे सितम लगा के ऐ चाँद गर्दन शरीफ सर की बाजू छिदा बदर का दोनों तरफ तड़प कर प्यासे जहां से गुजरे ऐ चाँद इस बनने की बच्ची बाबा को ढूंढती थी बिखरे हुए पड़े थे जब सर बोई तलाशे ऐ चाँद फिर ये भी तूने देखा वो गम रसीदा बची सीने पर सो रही थी बेसर बदर से लिपटे ऐ चाँद शहज़ादे जिनाही मालिक है बला का किसकी मजाल आए जब तक न हो बुलाए ऐ चाँद करबला के तूने तो देखे होंगे उतरे थे इस ज़मीं पर अर्शे बनी के तारे ऐ चाँद
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. We are honored to have the university here. Will be here for the next time Majalis. I'm extremely grateful because he was supposed to start the Majalis starting the tomorrow. We traveled today, but as the dates change, we are expecting him to start from tomorrow. So even then, he agreed to start the Majalis from today. So loud salawat for here is honest too. Nare Hedri. Nare Hedri.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد، فقال الحسين بن علي لأخيه محمد بن الحنفية في وصيته: إني لم أخرج أشرا ولا ظاهرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما، وإنما خرجت لإصلاح أمة جدي رسول الله، أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر وأسير بسيرة جدي وأبي علي بن أبي طالب.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
It's my pleasure to be with you all. I want to just check the sound system is it magnifying here, or do you want to hear my voice here? Very good. Should I project, or it's coming through the speakers?
I think it's coming from the speakers.
Okay. So it's clear for everyone? I began this lecture, and inshallah this will be the theme for the series that I'm here to deliver to you, with a wasiyah that you're, I'm sure, very familiar with. This is the wasiyah, the testament that Imam Hussein alayhi salam gave to his brother Muhammad ibn Hanafiya before he left Medina, as he was going to Mecca and then eventually towards Kufa and Karbala. The wasiyah is a statement of purpose for what Imam Hussein was out to do, and also a kind of immunization, inoculation against false allegations that would inevitably arise as he sets out. And even now, to this day, you have people who will say that Hussein made a mistake because he rose up and rebelled against the legitimate authority of the time. People who say something like that, right? So even now, that kind of a sentiment against Imam Hussein's movement. So he wanted to go on the record with a written document to state what he is not doing and what he is doing as he sets out from Medina. So he tells Muhammad ibn Hanafiya that he is not setting out on this mission ashiran wa batira. It's not out of arrogance. It's not out of any personal ego that I want to rule. I want to be on top. I want to be in charge. And so that's why I'm going to serve, because I have an ego that I need to serve. That's not the case. Wala mufsidan. I'm not setting out trouble. It's not. The purpose is not to cause people to launch a war, to play politics and these kinds of things. Without ظالم, I'm not doing anything unjust, not going out to take anything that doesn't rightfully belong to me, or deny anyone anything that belongs to them. So these are not my purposes, he says. The only reason I'm setting out, إنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي رسول الله. The sole purpose that I have is to bring about reform in the ummah of my grandfather Rasulullah. And then he says how he wants to do it. What are the things that are going to lead to that Islam, to lead to that reform? أريد أن أمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. The thing that has died, which is a foundational aspect of Islam, which has died, and because it's dead, that's why the ummah is in disrepair, that's why the ummah is suffering, is because Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi anil Munkar are not happening. It's educational force that's there. Those who know have a responsibility to guide those who don't, and those who are not, those who are in a position to guide people so they act on what they know and refrain from what they know to guide. If that element, that activity of pointing and forbidding is not there in your family, in your community, and in the ummah at large, then everything falls apart. Right? Children, how are they supposed to learn Islam if you're not there and joining and forbidding? That is one of your most important duties as a parent, to teach them not only theoretical teaching, but being there on a daily basis and telling them, don't do this and do this. Here's what we're aspiring to. This is what you should become. These are the things we don't want to become. When they make a mistake, correcting them and saying, no, this is what you should have done. When they fail in some way, you didn't do the right thing. Here's what you should have done. Correcting them, helping them in the best way possible. That's the duty, the most fundamental, important, God-given duty that we have as parents. And then you can extend that to all your spheres of influence. As a community member, as an influencer in the community, or teacher, whatever roles you have this duty. It's a fundamental duty. And without that, you end up with a free-for-all. How are people supposed to learn? So Imam Hussein puts a finger on this, that this institution has died, and I need to revive it. I'm going to enjoin good and forbid evil, and this is how I'm going to bring about Islam, reform in the ummah of my grandfather Rasulullah. But he also makes it clear that I'm not only coming to fix other people. It's not just the deen, it's not just for you. That for instance, maybe I have some knowledge that I need to impart, and I teach you, but then I go and do the opposite. I don't bother heeding my own knowledge, and I only come to teach you something, and then I myself live a corrupt life. That's not the way it works. I have to start for myself. I have to first live the teachings of Islam and embark in this and engage in this the best way I can. And then, in parallel, that I have a duty to people around me to also bring them along. So he wants to reform other people, but he says himself, وَأَسِيرَ بِي سِيرَتِي جَدِّي وَأَبِي عَلِيٌّ. I want to follow in the footsteps. I want to live my life into the seerah of Rasulullah. My father, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abaway had the two fathers of this ummah. It's the seerah that I want to follow. So this is a really important mission statement that Imam Hussein is giving us, and that sets the stage for everything. Everything that we know now, every story that we learn about Karbala, every statement that we read from Imam Hussein, we have the lens through which we should look at that. Anything that's in line with this mission is correct. Anything that is against this mission had nothing to do with Imam Hussein. If someone comes and says that Imam Hussein did something wrong or rose up against a legitimate government or caused this corruption, was illegitimate or was looking for his own personal ego, any of these things, he himself blocked those lines of argument and said, no, none of those are true. Here is my mission statement, clear right from the outset. So the last phrase that he mentions, أريد أن أسير بسيرة جدي وأبي. I want to follow in the footsteps in the seerah of Rasulullah and my father. This is the little kernel I want to put my finger on and focus a little bit for the next 10 days. One of the things that we also need to do if we're going to start to align ourselves with Imam Hussein, the tawaddi of him, is to center on this mission that he had. He himself was trying to travel the path, go in the footsteps of Rasulullah and Ali. This seerah is a very important part of our knowledge. We need to understand what is that seerah of the Prophet that Imam Hussein himself is saying he wants to revive, he wants to act on. One of the problems that we have as Shia of Ahlul Bayt is that we have sometimes a little bit of too much distance between ourselves and the seerah of Rasulullah. If you just look at our calendar here and the activities that we have in these Husayniyat and masajid around the world, very much the calendar is focused around members of Ahlul Bayt and their wiladat and their shahadat and other activities that happened in their lives, and we're trying to commemorate those. All those are very important. But by proportion, very little of those events, and if you look at the content of the speeches, of the poetry, very little of what we focus on has to do directly with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Yes, we are Shia of Ali. And that's the name, the label that Rasulullah himself gave to the followers of Ali. But we shouldn't misunderstand that label to say that we are Shia of Ali and therefore Rasulullah, for instance, God forbid, he's secondary, is not important. As long as we get to the Imam, that's all that we can stop there. Just reflect on yourself, your own understanding, your own knowledge. How much of the seerah of the Prophet do you know? How much have you read about his life? How many ahadith of Rasulullah can you quote from memory? That you understood them, you memorized them? Typically, and maybe you're exceptional, but typically amongst the Shia, we tend to be a little weak in this area. Two very important areas, actually, the Quran and the seerah of the Prophet, which are the cornerstones of our Islamic learning. As Shia, sometimes we sideline these two. We focus so heavily on Ahlul Bayt and their manaqib and their virtues and their stories and their praise. Which again, that's finished. That is also important, but it tends to supplant, replace the focus that we should also be putting on the thing that they, Ahlul Bayt, actually stood for, which was following in the seerah of Rasulullah, teaching the Quran and living the Quran. Just think of the absurdity of that. We're trying to follow in the footsteps. We're trying to be Shia, followers of Ahlul Bayt. To be a follower of Ahlul Bayt, what did they stand for? Every other word that they utter is in the Quran or this is what Rasulullah did or said. That's their message. That's their life. But sometimes instead of following in their footsteps by also focusing on Quran and also focusing on Rasulullah, we put those two things, which were their mission statements, out and just focus on Ahlul Bayt by themselves to the exclusion of those other things. So we missed the point. The thing that was supposed to be a means to an end, we've ignored the end and we focused on the means. And the means itself has become our end. So that's something that we have to look within ourselves, look within our community activities, and see, is this true? Does it play out here also amongst yourselves in your own Islamic practice and your Islamic understanding? From my experience, this is the case. And this is what we have to constantly correct within ourselves and then within our communities. focus ourselves through Ahlul Bayt. They are our lens, they are our guides towards Quran. They are our windows towards the Seerah of Rasulullah. I don't know if you've ever interacted much with our Ahlul Sunnah brethren. But sometimes what happens if you have a discussion with them and you're trying to compare notes and compare and contrast your understanding of the deen. The Sunni might say, for instance, we do such and such, we practice such and such. Why? Because of Sunnah of Rasulullah. Because we have this hadith from this source, and that's the reason why they practice in this way, they do this thing. What would be the Shia's contribution to comparison and contrast? Oftentimes, most often, the Shia would say, for instance, oh, well, we practice it in a different way. Why? Because fatwa of Sayyid Khamenei, Sayyid Sistani. Just the appearance of that, I think people be lost. What's the comparison? One person saying, Qala Rasulullah, that's why I'm acting. And one person saying, Qala, this marriage or that marriage, which again, the point is not to say the marriage is not important or we shouldn't do that or we shouldn't follow the fatwa of the marriage. All of that's important. I'm just saying, look at the appearance that those two statements. I put myself in that position, I feel like I've lost. What am I doing? Why am I not able to say I do this because of Rasulullah's action? Because of this hadith of the Imam, which goes back to Rasulullah. Why don't we connect all the dots all the way to the top? And instead we only take the fatwa, and that's the extent of our knowledge. So it's really important for us to connect all the way back. Let me maybe set things straight. I don't want you to misunderstand. So I'm not saying our focus on Ahlul Bayt is wrong, and we should put them aside and focus on Quran and Sunnah and leave Ahlul Bayt aside. That's all. The first thing I said was that what we tend to do is focus so much on the means that we forget that they are actually supposed to be a means to take us to Quran and Sunnah, but we tend to not focus on their goal and make them the goal instead. So what's the solution? Not to cast them aside, no, use them for what they are. They are our guides, they are our windows to Quran and Sunnah. The closer we get to any matter of debate, the closer in fact we're actually getting to Rasulullah. It's one and the same, but we have to make that connection. We can't put Rasulullah out of our mind and say, I'm following Imam Sadiq and that's the end. He's the end goal. Because what is Imam Sadiq himself saying? Every step he takes, every word he utters, he says, this is the teaching of my forefather Rasulullah. So that I think is one kind of line of connection we need to. So when we kind of get a hadith, if you look at a book of hadith and it ends with Imam Sadiq or Imam Rida or the Imams, and they are the end of the hadith's chain. They are the ones who are speaking and saying, this is what is true. One thing the Shia need to understand is that behind the scenes, every single thing that the Imam tells us, they are telling us because this is something that they have inherited from. They themselves say it. Imam Sadiq says, Hadithi hadith wa hadithu abi hadithu jaddi wa hadithu jaddi hadithu Amir al-Mu'mineen. Hadithu Amir al-Mu'mineen hadithu al-Nabi wa hadithu al-Nabi kalam Allah azza wa jalla. Whatever I tell you, it's exactly what I've learned from my father. Whatever I've gotten from my father, he got from his father, from my grandfather. And like that, all the way up from Amir al-Mu'mineen, from Rasulullah, whatever Allah says, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's very important for us to realize that. We say that Imam Sadiq has said something. We say that the hadith of the Ma'soom it's good. We don't have to go any further. That's true. We don't have to go any further. because they're ma'soom, and whatever knowledge they have is from this source. So yes, that's all correct. That whatever Imam Sadiq actually says and does is hujjah for us. That's the end. That's all I need. I don't need him to tell me, to prove to me that whatever he's telling me goes back to has some provenance with Allah and with Rasul. I don't need that. The whole meaning of saying I'm a Shi'i and I accept you as Hujjatullah and you are Ma'soom and you are Wa'idu al-Nabiyyin is that whatever you tell me, I accept it. But it's still important behind the scenes for us to understand that that connection is there. Everything he has, it's not his own invention, it's not his own thought that he's come up with this new idea. Everything he's giving us is from this divine source. And once we understand that, then our discussion with that hypothetical discussion with the member of Ahlul Sunnah becomes much more on this parity. There's a comparison between the two. You are saying Qala Rasulullah, I'm also saying Qala Rasulullah. You're saying you do something because it's the Sunnah of Rasulullah. What they're unstated between the lines, behind the scenes, what's happening to them, that's also something we have to understand. So I explained on the Shi'i side, when Imam Sadiq says something, it's actually coming from Rasulullah. Really, on both sides, for the Ahlul Sunnah and for the Shia, what we are actually trying to do is to get back to the teachings of Rasulullah. That is across the board. Every Muslim wants to understand, what does Rasulullah teach us? What did he do? What did he say? And how does that inform what we're supposed to do and say now? That's what every Muslim is after. No difference. The difference is, how do we get to him? Because we don't have personal contact with him. Right? We have no direct line to Rasulullah because we don't live with him. We haven't had first-hand contact with him. So necessarily, every Muslim has to have some intermediary. We have to have some chain of transmission to get back to Rasulullah's teachings. So when the Sunni says that I do such and such because it's the Sunnah of Rasulullah, the unstated reality that's behind that proposition is that I am acting based on my understanding of what Rasulullah did or said, based on this line of transmission that comes through people other than Ahlul Bayt. And when the Shi'i is saying that I'm acting on this fatwa of this marji or that marji, behind the scenes, actually what they are saying, what they should understand, is that the marji is a mujtahid, is a faqih who is trying to get to the sources and the origin of that source in hadith or Quran that he is getting is from Rasulullah also. But this time it's through a chain that comes through Ahlul Bayt. So the fatwa of the marji, or the way a Sunni would say, I do this because it's the Sunnah of Rasulullah, it is the same thing. They're both trying to get back to the Sunnah of Rasulullah, but their chain of transmission, the line, the windows that they're going through to try to get that information are two different chains, two different windows. And there is the difference. We have one of our ulama, Sayyid Murtala Askari, who he coined these terms. He would call Ahlul Sunnah Madrasatul Khulafa, and he would call the Shia Madrasatul Ahlul Bayt. The school of the Khulafa and the school of Ahlul Bayt. And that's a very beautiful way to characterize the reality of these two things. We are followers of Ahlul Bayt, which of course includes Rasulullah. He is the head of Ahlul Bayt. And everyone else is getting their knowledge from him. And so if we can connect to any ma'soom from Ahlul Bayt, then they connect us to Rasulullah. And those who don't see Ahlul Bayt as being anything special, who don't recognize that they are ma'soom, that they have any sort of special knowledge that they've received from Rasulullah, any of those things. They're special because they're related to Rasulullah, but there's nothing special about them. Maybe there's someone else who's smarter than them or has more knowledge. Even if they say something, maybe it's wrong. If they have that kind of attitude, then yes, they might take a hadith from Ali, they might take a hadith from any of the imams. But it's not in some special way that this is some special knowledge, that they have some special insight into Rasulullah. It's just one of many opinions. All these different companions narrated from Rasulullah. Ali was also there, he also narrated something. So this companion says such and says, Ali says something. Maybe we'll favor the companion, say maybe Ali made a mistake. So that school is called the school of the Khulafa. It was dominated by these Khulafa who assumed power after Rasulullah. They were in power and they had control over the way knowledge was transmitted, how much was preserved, how much was changed, whether it was recorded in writing or not. And that became the dominant narrative. Recite wa salawat. So why is it important? So the goal then is to try to use this phrase of Imam Hussein, "Uridu an asira bi sirati jaddi Rasulullah." I want to act on, live by, put my feet in the footsteps of Rasulullah. So he is trying to live the life of Rasulullah. That is also our goal. It must be our goal. As Muslims, that's the same thing. To say I'm Muslim, I submit myself to Allah, also means I want to live according to the Sunnah of Rasulullah, according to the Seerah of Rasulullah. So Imam Hussein's stated goal must be our mission statement of our life as well. How can we do that? We have to increase our knowledge. We need to know what the Seerah of Rasulullah is. And what did he teach? What was his life? So that's history. And then in that history is everything that he said, everything that he did, all of his interactions. So we have to now know what that seerah is if we want to walk in the footsteps. Otherwise, what footsteps? If I don't know what Rasulullah did and what he said, if I'm not well versed in that, then this is a pipe dream. It's a slogan, but I can't act on it because I don't know where are the footsteps. Where's the trail that's leading to Rasulullah, where he's at, I can go put my feet in his footsteps. I don't even know where the trail is. Then where am I headed? What do I do? So that's why it's so important for us to focus on the seerah, to understand the history of Rasulullah's life, which is referred to as the seerah of the Prophet, seerah al-Nabawiyah, the seerah of the Prophet. This word seerah, sayr, it might be a word that's also familiar to you in Urdu and Farsi and other languages. Sayr is used for traveling. Right? Sara Yasir in Arabic also means to travel. Sira, this particular pattern, is the way of traveling, a particular style or way of travel. So if you walk in a certain way, if you travel in a certain way, that's called your sira. So Rasulullah's sira is the way he lived. What did he do? What did he say? How did he interact with people? What were his goals? What were his policies? How did he accomplish them? What were his strategies? He interacted with people of different backgrounds. He was strict with some people. He was very compassionate with some people. Why? What's the difference? So understanding what he did and what he said, and then also the whys, trying to get some wisdom from it and see what's the pattern here. Because if he's doing, for instance, sometimes you see the imams will leave the Prophet aside for him, but sometimes the imams will be very strict. Someone will come and ask a question, and they'll basically shut them down and be very kind of angry with them. And then sometimes the person will come and they'll be angry with the imam, and the imam might be very kind and very gentle and very generous with them, and that person flips. So you see different interactions with different people, but you can't just say, well, the imam's having a bad day and a good day, and that's why he acts in different ways. That's beneath them that they would be so flippant that it's based on their mood, how they interact with people. And it doesn't help us, because then I can just say, well, however I feel, if I feel happy, then I'll interact with you well. If I feel kind of irritated, I'll be mean to you. No, but there's wisdom behind how the imam or how the prophet is interacting with people. So that's something that we have to try to understand and see. Well, what was it about that person or this interaction or that question or the background, what they had done and asked before that made the Imam act this particular way. Maybe so many times, and I was coming again, and the Imam knows some, intention, or he's trying to entrap the Imam, or he's annoying the Imam, something like that, and that's why he acts in a particular way. And he knows that this person who's angry with him and who is being rude to him is only rude because he doesn't know who he is. He has some, imaginary idea of who this Imam is, and so he comes and he's rude to the Imam, but the Imam can change that around by being very kind and generous and being the opposite of what the person thinks he is, and then the person's perception also changes. So trying to understand some of the wisdom then gives us models for how we should also interact in a comprehensive and meaningful way. There are some challenges to understanding the seerah of the Prophet. One of the challenges we have is that there was a concerted campaign to prevent people from reporting the seerah of the Prophet. So from the time of the second Khalifa, Umar ibn Khattab, so he took over in the 13th year of the Hijrah. Rasulullah dies in the beginning of the 11th year, then Abu Bakr is Khalifa for 2 years, and Umar becomes Khalifa in the 13th year of the Hijrah. He instituted a policy whereby he said that nobody is allowed to write anything from Rasulullah. And he put a restriction on who could speak and kind of disseminate the hadith of Rasulullah. The policy was the stated reason for why he didn't want this to happen was they didn't want people to make the same mistake that the Christians made with the Bible. But now in the Bible that we have, the New Testament that we have, there are statements that are attributed to Isa alayhi salam. There are statements that say that the Injil said something. The revealed book that was given to Isa, he would then recite it for people, teach it to people, but then the way it was reported is a mixture. The Bible is something of a mixture between scripture and seerah, and what Isa alayhi salam did and said. It's more like a story of the revelation. So some of it is scripture and some of it is hadith, and then some of it's manufactured and fabricated. So you didn't want the same thing to happen with the Quran, that people would get confused. Is this Quran or is this what Rasulullah said? Is this Quran or is this history? And if it's all written in a society, they've just learned how to write. And the only thing they've written, the only book that exists at the time is the Quran. And now people start also writing hadith of Rasulullah, this would be confused. So this was the reason that he gave for why he didn't want this to happen. And so he puts a ban on writing anything from Rasulullah. And the ban continues for almost 85 years. Until the Khilafah of the Umayyad, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So from Umar to Umar, there was a ban. Umar is in 13, that's when he starts the Khilafah. Then Umar ibn Abdul Aziz is in power from 99 to 1 of the Hijrah, so basically 100. Right? So from 13 to 100, you have this policy of ban on any of the sayings of the Prophet, any history of the Prophet, any hadith of the Prophet. And then nobody was able to disseminate, even orally. People who were with the Prophet as his companions were barred from teaching people. Only certain individuals who were in line, official party line, were allowed to sit in Masjid Nabi and tell people a hadith of Rasulullah. So we have, for instance, Aisha was one of them, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari was one of them, Zayd ibn was one of them. There are certain individuals, 5-6 individuals, who were given special permission that you can sit in Masjid Nabi and people can come and learn from you. They can't write it down, but you can tell them what you heard from Rasulullah, and they can also hear it and memorize it and get it to them. But it was Just imagine, 85 years, almost 100 years, silence. No record. No written record, and a very limited oral record of anything that Rasulullah said or did. Then in the turn of the century, beginning of the 2nd century, with Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, people start to realize what a tragedy this is. Here we're trying to understand the whole point of Islam is to take from the Prophet and live according to the life of the Prophet. We don't even know anything about him. We have the Quran. We don't have a hadith. We don't have anything to teach us what Rasulullah said. There's some examples of how far gone people were, that they didn't even know how to pray, didn't even know how to do Hajj, simple rituals that for us now it seems so. Our children learn these things. People in the ummah of this turn of the century of the Muslims, they didn't know these things because they had no sources of knowledge. So this was one of the things that motivated the Khalifa Umar ibn Abdul Aziz to now employ people as court appointees with patronized individuals to go and start to compile works and books on these different areas. Now, there were people who defied the ban. Amir al-Mu'mineen was one of them, and his close companions also. They didn't give in to the ban, and they continued to write. Amir al-Mu'mineen and Hassan and Hussein, they continued to teach during this time. Just think of the dates. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz is a contemporary of Sadiq ibn Bakr and Sadiq ibn Mas'ud. Right, so think how many generations now, from the time of Rasulullah all the way up until the fifth Imam's time. That's 3 generations where people have very little contact with any knowledge of Rasulullah, and only Ahlul Bayt are the source that people can come to and know of anything about him. So this is creates a huge challenge for us to know the seerah of Rasulullah, because you have this huge gap, a huge hole in the chain of transmission. And it's very easy to introduce things and manufacture things when there's such a gap. If you all don't know anything about something and I come in, I'm the first person to tell you, I can make it. No one can challenge you because you don't have any point of reference. It's only when you are educated and then follow what I'm saying and also maybe challenge me and say, wait, match. I read this other alternative. If you have done your homework, you have some base knowledge, now you have a point of reference, you can challenge what I'm saying. People didn't have that. So one of the blessings that we as followers of Ahlul Bayt have is that we have the Ahlul Bayt themselves. The famous statement is, Ahlul Bayt adra bima fil bayt. Who knows best about what happens in the house? The people of the house. Ahlul Bayt know best what goes on in their house. And there's a continuous chain of transmission amongst them. No ban on the outside, no ban on writing or this or that is going to affect the transmission of knowledge from Rasulullah to Ali, from Ali to Hassan, from Hassan to Hussein, and all the way down to the children of Hussein. And so when the Ummah finally wakes up, as this ban is lifted, people become thirsty for knowledge. When they become thirsty and they start coming to learn, they come to Madinat Nabi. This is when Imam Bakr and Imam Sadiq, particularly 2 individuals, they're able to offer, just like their predecessors could also offer, but now the difference is that they have receptors. People are now receptive to what they have to do. And so for a brief amount of time during their imamah, they are able to disseminate so much of the knowledge of Rasulullah. For the first time in this 3-4 generations, the Muslims are now awakened to the fact that they were ignorant. And they luckily still have a source, even though they've lost many other sources, but they have the most important source, which is Ahlul Bayt, to teach them the fiqh and the aqa'id and the history of the Prophet of Islam. Recite salawat. So inshallah, we're going to go through in these few days and it's not going to be a comprehensive seerah of the Prophet in 10 days, but I'm going to choose certain incidents and certain, more important than facts, I want to prepare your mind, prepare you with how our ulama deal with the seerah. Right? If you have certain tools in your tool belt, that will put you in a much better place to gain knowledge and interact with knowledge. That's more important than me just giving you the knowledge itself and the facts themselves. So we won't go through it in a systematic way, look at the seerah of the Prophet, but I'm going to focus on some of these big picture ideas and hopefully increase our ability to and our preparation to engage with knowledge of the Prophet's life. Inshallah. Follow in these footsteps of Imam Hussein. As he wanted to follow in the footsteps of Rasulullah, we also need to know the seerah before we can act on it. Today was the first of Muharram. The events of, very wisely, one of our ulama says that Imam Hussein was killed on the day of Saqifa. If you know your history, you'll know that's inaccurate, but if you understand your history, then you know that's very accurate. The first step to sidelining Ahlul Bayt, the door, well, in a way, close the door for us to access knowledge and open the door to vote against Ahlul Bayt, and also depriving ourselves was Saqifa. But we're told that the series of events that leads more directly to Karbala begins in the 15th of Rajab of the year 60 when Muawiyah dies. With his death, it became very obvious and very publicly knowable that the treaty that he had contracted with Imam Hassan alayhi salam was now officially and publicly violated. And he had violated it in so many ways, but it was still easy for people to misunderstand and for propaganda to cover up the other crimes. But one of the terms of Imam Hassan's treaty with Muawiyah had been that upon his death, Muawiyah would not appoint a successor. And that the Khilafah would either revert to Imam Hassan if he's alive or to Imam Hussein if he's alive, but it would not become an inherited kingdom that Muawiyah could appoint somebody. And when he dies, he immediately does appoint him. This wasiyyah is known that he has appointed Yazid, and it becomes publicly known that now Muawiyah and his successor have violated the treaty with Imam Hassan, and then to Imam Hussein to launch his rebellion. Word is sent from Damascus to the governor in Medina, who is the second cousin of Yazid. His name is Walid ibn Utbah. The message that's sent is that, of course, Muawiyah has died and Yazid is his successor. Before you publicly announce this series of events and get the bay'ah of the people for Yazid, Muawiyah had the foresight before he died to advise Yazid to make sure that these three individuals who were very powerful and very influential in society, that you first go to them, get their bay'ah, or do away with them, kill them, people, and get their allegiance. And Utbah sends word to Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Zubayr and Imam Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. Is odd because it's after the normal working hours, the evening time when letters are sent, messengers are sent to these individuals, and they are suspicious. Why are we being summoned at this hour? Imam Hussein has the insights to say that my guess is that Muawiyah has died, and since Yazid's move to try to silence any opposition. He goes to the governor of the Khalifa, but with preparation. He first goes to his home and he prepares 30 individuals, 30 of the youth from Ahlul Bayt and Banu Hashim, arms them, and has them escort him to the Dar E Zehra. He tells them that if I raise my voice, that's your cue to come in and help me. Otherwise, you stay outside. And so he goes in and he interacts with Walid ibn Utbah and asks what your business is. He says that the Khalifa has died and Yazid is now the Khalifa and he's demanding your bay'ah. Imam Hussein's immediate response is, this is not the way to do things. Bay'ah does not happen in secret and in private, in the dark of night. When you announce publicly to the people and you solicit their allegiance, then I will also, you can also solicit my allegiance at that time, but not like this. So he makes the leave. Walid's companion Marwan ibn al-Hakam, he is also there, and he tells Walid that if you let him go at this time, you'll never have the opportunity again until it's too late and there's blood between. Imam Hussein becomes very angry at him. He says, are you threatening me with death? You're going to kill me? Walid also feels very uncomfortable with Marwan's suggestion. He says, I do not want the blood of Hussein on my hands. But he wants to go. He is said to come back. Let's give him that chance. I don't want to be the one who is going to kill him, because I know that a person who has the blood of Ahlul Bayt on his hands has no hope of Shafa'a Rasulullah, the grandfather of Ahlul Bayt, on the Day of Judgment. He has that level of understanding. It said that Imam Hussein alayhi salam says something that removes hope from them. He says that Mithli la yubayi'u mithla Yazid. Someone like me doesn't give allegiance to someone like Yazid. He is someone who openly drinks wine and commits all sorts of sin, and the likes of me is not going to give bay'ah to him. Marwan again says something that causes some anger, and Imam Hussein raises his voice, and the 30 members of Banu Hashim rush in. They surround him with daggers drawn, and they escort Imam Hussein out of the Dar E Zehra. That evening, Imam Hussein went to the grave of Rasulullah. It said that he offered a prayer, and then he engaged in some Sikh conversation with Rasulullah in his grave, and he was shown a vision where Rasulullah comes to him and he sees legions of angels on his right and his left and him. And he complains to Rasulullah that your ummah is acting like this toward me. Rasulullah says that I am here with your father and with your mother and with your brother, and we yearn for your comfort. We're waiting for you to join us. He says that it's as the field of Karbala, covered in your oil and sand for the plains of Karbala. Imam Hussein asks his grandfather, he says, take me now. Don't let me go back into this world. I'm ready. If you are yearning for my company, I'm also yearning for your company. Take me now and let me enter my grave at this time. Rasulullah tells him that your time will come, but there is a station in paradise that is reserved for you that you can only attain through your shahada. And your uncle Jafar and your great uncle Asadullah will be raised together in the ranks of the Shuhada. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati حلت بفناك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقي وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر عهدهم بزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى غير الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين أصحاب الحسين. Allah, we ask you to shower your mercy and blessing on Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Help us, Allah, during these days of Muharram to commemorate the death and the life of Imam Hussein and accept whatever efforts we are making to honor him. Keep us on the path of Hussein and faith and help us to follow in the footsteps of Rasulullah. Bring us closer to Rasulullah in this world and allow us to benefit from this shafa'ah in judgment. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله.
Yeah.